The scream echoed across the frozen lake as Margaret gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white against the cold leather. She had driven them out here in the dead of night, the car's headlights cutting through the darkness like accusatory fingers. Lydia and Brielle, her two daughters, sat in the back seat, their faces pale with confusion and fear, unaware that this family outing was about to become their nightmare. Margaret slammed on the brakes at the lake's edge, the car skidding on the icy gravel. "Get out!" she barked, her voice trembling with a rage that had been building for weeks. Lydia, the older one at 25, exchanged a glance with Brielle, 22, their hands brushing subtly in the shadows. A touch that had once been innocent sisterly affection but now carried the weight of secrets. They stepped out into the biting wind, the lake's surface a sheet of black ice under the moonless sky. Without warning, Margaret lunged at them, her hands shoving hard against their backs. Lydia stumbled first, her boots slipping on the frost, and she grabbed Brielle's arm as they both tumbled toward the water. The ice cracked beneath them with a deafening roar, and cold water swallowed them whole. Margaret stood there, watching the bubbles rise, her heart pounding with a mix of horror and twisted relief. She had discovered their letters, the hidden photos, the undeniable proof of their love. A love she saw as an abomination, a betrayal of everything she held sacred in their small, conservative town of Willow Creek, Michigan. As the minutes ticked by, Margaret's resolve cracked like the ice. What had she done? She fumbled for her phone, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. "My daughters. They fell into the lake. Please hurry." Sirens wailed in the distance as she collapsed to her knees, the reality sinking in. But then a gasp broke the silence. Lydia's head surfaced, dragging Brielle with her, both coughing and sputtering, alive against all odds. The town's rescuers arrived just in time, pulling them from the frigid depths, wrapping them in blankets as whispers spread like wildfire. Margaret hadn't just let them fall, she had pushed them. The hospital room was sterile and bright, a stark contrast to the darkness that had enveloped their lives. Lydia lay in one bed, Brielle in the other, separated by a thin curtain that did little to hide their stolen glances. Doctors murmured about hypothermia, about how the sisters had clung to each other, their body heat saving them from the worst. Margaret paced outside, her face a mask of feigned concern, but inside turmoil raged. How could her girls, raised in a God-fearing home, turn to each other like this? She remembered the day she adopted Brielle as a baby, after Lydia's birth father left, thinking it would complete their family. Now it felt like a curse. Lydia's mind raced as she stared at the ceiling. She had always known her feelings for Brielle were different, deeper than sisterly bonds. It started in high school, innocent crushes on girls that she buried deep, until one night during college break, a shared kiss under the stars ignited everything. Brielle, with her fiery spirit and gentle eyes, felt the same. A love that bloomed in secrecy, hidden from their mother's judgmental gaze and the town's prying eyes. But now, exposed by that plunge into the lake, Lydia wondered if survival was a blessing or a new hell. What price would they pay for being true to themselves? Brielle shifted in her bed, wincing at the ache in her lungs. She replayed the shove in her mind, the betrayal stinging more than the cold. Margaret had always been strict, enforcing church attendance and traditional values, but this? Attempted murder? Brielle's heart ached not just for herself, but for Lydia, who had always protected her. Their love wasn't a choice. It was a force that pulled them together despite the world's efforts to tear them apart. As nurses bustled in, Brielle whispered through the curtain, "We can't go back away. Not after this." The police arrived the next morning, their questions sharp and unrelenting. Margaret sat in the waiting room, twisting her wedding ring. Her husband had died years ago, leaving her to raise the girls alone. She claimed it was an accident, a slip on the ice during a late-night walk to clear their heads after a family argument. But Lydia, fueled by a surge of defiance, told the truth. "She pushed us because she found out about us," she said, her voice steady despite the fear. The officer's eyebrow raised. "About what?" Brielle from her bed chimed in. "We're in love. With each other." The words hung in the air like a confession in church, shocking the room into silence. The officer nodded, jotting notes, while Margaret overheard from the doorway, her face draining of color. The town of Willow Creek, with its population of just over 5,000, buzzed with the news by afternoon. Whispers in the diner, stares at the grocery store. Margaret felt the weight of judgment she had once wielded against others. Her church friends called, offering prayers laced with disapproval. How could she, a pillar of the community, harbor such sin in her home? Lydia and Brielle were discharged that evening, but home was no longer safe. They checked into a motel on the outskirts, paid for with savings Lydia had stashed away. Lying side by side on the lumpy bed, they held each other, not in passion but in quiet desperation. What if she tries again? Brielle murmured. Lydia stroked her hair, her mind churning with decisions. They could run, start over somewhere accepting, but leaving meant abandoning their roots, their friends. Or they could fight, expose the truth, but at what cost to their fragile family? The night stretched on, filled with unspoken fears and the first cracks of a larger storm brewing in Willow Creek. Morning light filtered through the motel's thin curtains as Lydia brewed coffee in the tiny kitchenette. Brielle sat at the table scrolling through her phone, her face paling with each notification. "The whole town's talking," she said, showing Lydia the local Facebook group exploding with posts. Accusations flew. Some called Margaret a monster. Others defended her as a mother protecting her family from deviance. One comment stung. "Those girls brought this on themselves. Unnatural love invites tragedy." Lydia set down the mugs, her hands steady but her heart racing. They had to decide their next move. Pressing charges against Margaret would tear the family apart forever, but letting it slide meant living in fear. Brielle leaned forward, her eyes fierce. "We can't let her get away with it. She tried to kill us, LYD, for loving each other." Lydia nodded, but doubt gnawed at her. Margaret wasn't evil. She was scared, shaped by a lifetime of rigid beliefs in a town that prized conformity above all. They drove to the police station, the air thick with tension. Inside, Detective Harlan, a grizzled man in his 50s, listened to their full statement. "This is serious," he said, eyeing them with a mix of sympathy and discomfort. In Willow Creek, same-sex relationships were whispered about, not celebrated. As they spoke, Margaret arrived, summoned for questioning. She burst into the room, her eyes wild. "You don't understand. I was saving them from eternal damnation." The outburst sealed her fate. Handcuffs clicked around her wrists as she was arrested for attempted murder. News spread like wildfire. By evening, protesters gathered outside the station, some with signs supporting LGBTQ rights, others decrying the breakdown of family values. Lydia and Brielle watched from afar, hidden in their car. Brielle squeezed Lydia's hand. "This is bigger than us now." Lydia felt a pang of guilt. Their private love had become public spectacle, forcing the town to confront its prejudices. Friends from high school texted, some offering support, others cutting ties. One message from their aunt read, "How could you do this to your mother?" Back at the motel, they argued for the first time since the incident. Brielle paced, furious. "We should go public, tell our story. Make them see we're not monsters." Lydia shook her head. "And drag everyone through the mud? Mom's already broken. What if this destroys her?" The words hung heavy, echoing the moral dilemma that plagued them. Was exposing the truth worth the pain it caused? Brielle stopped, tears streaming. "She pushed us into a lake, Lydia. We almost died. Forgiveness isn't weakness, but neither is justice." The next day brought more chaos. Margaret's bail hearing drew a crowd, the courtroom packed with townsfolk. Lydia and Brielle sat in the back, avoiding eyes. The judge set bail high, citing the severity, and Margaret was led away in tears. Outside, reporters swarmed. "How do you feel about your mother's actions?" one shouted at Lydia. She froze, then spoke. "Betrayed. But she's still our mom." The clip went viral locally, splitting opinions further. Some saw them as victims, others as instigators of family ruin. Brielle's phone rang incessantly, old classmates, distant relatives, all with questions. One call from their childhood pastor chilled her. "Repent, child. This path leads to sorrow." She hung up, slamming the phone down. Why can't they see love as love? Lydia pulled her close, but inside she questioned everything. Had their relationship been worth this? The secrecy had protected them, but now, exposed, it invited attack. Yet, turning back meant denying their truth, a betrayal of self. As days blurred, they sought solace in a local support group for LGBTQ individuals. There they met others with similar stories, disowned by families, shunned by communities, One woman, Elena, shared her tale of losing everything for her partner. The pain fades, she said. But the freedom is worth it. Brielle nodded, inspired, but Lydia felt conflicted. Freedom for them meant chains for Margaret, who now faced trial. Letters from jail arrived, pleading for forgiveness, claiming temporary insanity from shock. "I love you both," Margaret wrote. "I just wanted to protect you." Tears stained the paper as Lydia read aloud. Brielle softened slightly. "Maybe we can visit her." But the decision weighed heavy. Confronting Margaret meant facing the root of their pain. The mother's love twisted by societal norms. In Willow Creek, where church steeples dotted the skyline and tradition ruled, their love challenged the status quo. Lydia lay awake that night, pondering the cost. Every choice led to loss. Staying silent preserved family illusions, speaking out shattered them. The pressure mounted when a town hall meeting was called to discuss family values in crisis. Flyers plastered everywhere invited debate on the incident. Lydia and Brielle debated attending. "It's our story," Brielle argued. "We should own it." Lydia agreed reluctantly, knowing it could escalate the drama. As they entered the packed hall, whispers turned to stares. The moderator opened the floor and voices clashed. Support for Margaret's tough love, outrage at her violence, calls for understanding LGBTQ struggles. When Brielle stood to speak, the room hushed. "Our love isn't a threat. It's real. And trying to drown it won't make it go away." Applause mixed with boos, the divide stark. Lydia watched, heart pounding, realizing this was just the beginning of their fight. The fallout from the town hall rippled through Willow Creek like aftershocks. Lydia returned to her job at the local library, but colleagues avoided her gaze, stacking books in silence. One whispered, "I pray for you," laced with pity. Brielle, a barista at the coffee shop, faced outright hostility. Customers leaving without tipping, muttering slurs under their breath. The once familiar streets felt hostile, every corner a reminder of judgment. Margaret's trial loomed, set for 3 months out, giving time for wounds to fester. Lydia visited her in jail, the glass partition a barrier as cold as the lake. Margaret looked gaunt, her eyes hollow. "Why?" Lydia asked, voice breaking. Margaret leaned forward. "I saw those letters. It broke me. In my world, that's not love, it's confusion. I thought if I scared you enough." She trailed off, tears falling. Lydia's anger surged. "You almost killed us. For what? To fit your idea of normal." The visit ended in silence, Lydia leaving with more questions than answers. Was Margaret a victim of her upbringing, or a perpetrator of hate? Brielle refused to visit, channeling her energy into activism. She joined online forums, sharing their story anonymously at first, then boldly. Support poured in from across the state, messages from other queer women facing family rejection. One invited them to a rally in Detroit. "Let's go," Brielle urged Lydia. "Show them we're not alone." Lydia hesitated. Rallies meant exposure, more backlash. But seeing Brielle's passion, she agreed. The drive was tense, filled with what-ifs. At the rally, rainbow flags waved under the city lights, a sea of acceptance. Speakers shared tales of triumph over adversity, and when Brielle took the mic, her voice rang clear. "My sister and I fell in love. Our mother tried to drown us for it. But we're here, fighting for every family torn apart by fear." Cheers erupted, but Lydia felt exposed, vulnerable. Media coverage followed, their faces splashed across news sites. Back home, the backlash intensified. Vandalism at their motel. Sinners spray-painted on the door. Friends divided like the Red Sea. Old pal Sarah called supportive. "I'm here for you guys." But cousin Mark disowned them via text. "You're destroying the family name." The isolation deepened Lydia's inner turmoil. She loved Brielle fiercely, but the cost mounted. Lost relationships, constant fear. One night, as they packed to move to a safer apartment, Lydia snapped. "Is this worth it? We could have hidden forever." Brielle spun around. "Hidden? Like cowards?" "No. LYD. We deserve to live openly." The argument escalated, words like daggers revealing cracks in their bond. Reconciliation came at dawn. Apologies whispered in the quiet. But the strain lingered. Margaret's lawyer contacted them, pleading for a character statement to lighten her sentence. "She's remorseful," he said. Brielle laughed bitterly. Remorseful? She hasn't changed her views. Lydia pondered. Testifying against her felt like betrayal. For her, like mercy undeserved. The moral quagmire deepened. Forgiveness versus accountability. Love versus justice. As trial preparations ramped up, evidence mounted. Witness statements, medical reports, even Margaret's journal entries railing against unnatural affections. The prosecutor painted her as a fanatic, the defense as a desperate mother. Lydia and Brielle were called as witnesses, the thought terrifying. Practice sessions with their lawyer revealed vulnerabilities, Brielle's fiery temper, Lydia's hesitation. Stick to facts, he advised. But facts couldn't capture the emotional wreckage. A surprise visit from their estranged uncle added layers. He arrived at their new apartment, hat in hand. Your mom raised you right, but it's hard. He offered financial help if they reconsidered their lifestyle. Brielle slammed the door. We're not for sale. Lydia felt the sting. Family ties fraying, conditional love exposed. That night, she journaled her thoughts. How much sacrifice is too much? Our love sustains us, but the world chips away. The pre-trial hearing brought more drama. Margaret took the stand, sobbing. I love my daughters. I was wrong, but fear blinded me. The judge noted her remorse, but bail remained denied. Outside, supporters clashed. Pro-LGBTQ chants versus religious protests. A scuffle broke out, police intervening. Lydia and Brielle escaped the melee, hearts heavy. The town's fabric tore. Friendships ended. Businesses boycotted. In quiet moments, they reflected on their journey. Brielle traced Lydia's scar from the lake incident. A reminder of survival. We've come so far, she said. Lydia nodded, but doubt whispered. At what price? The high of rally empowerment faded against daily grind of prejudice. As the trial neared, tension peaked, decisions looming like storm clouds. Would they testify truthfully, risking harsher punishment for Margaret, or soften blows, compromising their integrity? The choices defined them, each path laced with regret. Trial day arrived under gray skies, the courthouse a battleground of emotions. Lydia and Brielle entered hand in hand, a defiant gesture amid flashing cameras. Inside, the gallery buzzed townsfolk, activists, media. Margaret sat at the defense table, avoiding their eyes, her face etched with defeat. The prosecutor opened strong, detailing the push, the intent. This wasn't an accident. It was hate-fueled violence. Lydia took the stand first, swearing in with a trembling hand. Questions probed deep. Describe your relationship with the defendant. She's our mother, Lydia said. Loving but controlling. Then the core. Why did she push you? Because she discovered Brielle and I are in love. Romantically. Gasps rippled through the room. Under cross-examination, the defense pressed. Did you provoke her with your lifestyle? Lydia's eyes flashed. Love isn't provocation. Stepping down, she felt drained, the exposure raw. Brielle followed, her testimony fiery. She called us abominations before shoving us in. The jury leaned forward, absorbing the drama. Margaret wept openly. During recess, she whispered to her lawyer, who approached the sisters. She wants to speak. In a side room, Margaret faced them. I'm sorry. I see now. Maybe I was wrong. Brielle scoffed. Maybe. Lydia intervened. We forgive you, but actions have consequences. The moment hung, a fragile bridge over the abyss. Testimonies continued. Experts on family dynamics, psychologists on internalized homophobia. One doctor explained how societal pressures could drive extreme acts. The defense argued temporary insanity, the prosecution premeditation. Closing arguments clashed. Justice for the victims versus compassion for a flawed mother. The jury deliberated for 2 days, tension suffocating Willow Creek. Verdict day packed the courtroom. Guilty of attempted manslaughter, the foreman read. Margaret collapsed, sentenced to 10 years, eligible for parole in 5. Reactions exploded. Cheers from supporters, sobs from her allies. Lydia and Brielle left in silence, the weight of victory hollow. Had they won or lost a piece of themselves? Post-trial, life shifted. Margaret appealed, but hope dimmed. Lydia and Brielle moved to Ann Arbor, seeking anonymity in the bigger city. New jobs, Lydia at a university library, Brielle at a progressive cafe, offered fresh starts. But scars remained. Therapy sessions unpacked trauma. Lydia's guilt over testifying, Brielle's anger at lost innocence. We paid the price, Brielle said in one session. But so did she. Connections reformed slowly. Letters from Margaret arrived reflective, questioning her beliefs. Prison Bible study opened my eyes, she wrote.
Brielle deeply tentative, but I'm ending in being.
Town friends reached out, some apologetic, others distant. A former classmate organized a support fund signaling change. But prejudice lingered. Anonymous threats followed them, a reminder of unfinished battles. In their new home they built routines. Evening walks, shared dreams. Yet doubts crept in. Lydia wondered if their love, born in taboo, could thrive openly. Brielle pushed forward, volunteering at LGBTQ centers. We're role models now, she said. One night, a heated discussion arose. Do you regret us? Lydia asked. Brielle paused. Never. But the pain. It's real. Honesty strengthened them, but the cost tallied high. Fractured family, uprooted lives. As months passed, media interest waned, but their story inspired others. A young woman emailed. Your courage saved me from hiding. Such messages affirmed their choices, yet Lydia pondered alternatives. What if they had denied their love, spared the drama? The thought haunted her, a shadow of what-ifs. Returning to Willow Creek for Margaret's first parole, hearing a year later brought closure and conflict. The town had evolved slightly, pride flags in some windows, a new support group. At the hearing, Lydia spoke. She's changed, but we haven't forgotten. Parole denied, but hope glimmered. Driving back, Brielle said. Maybe one day we'll all heal. Lydia nodded, the road ahead uncertain, filled with potential for redemption or further heartbreak. Years blended in Ann Arbor, where anonymity allowed Lydia and Brielle to flourish. They attended pride events hand in hand, no longer hiding. Brielle pursued a degree in social work, channeling pain into helping others. Lydia wrote articles anonymously about family acceptance, her words a quiet rebellion. But echoes of the past persisted, nightmares of icy water, calls from Margaret growing more introspective. I've joined a prison support group, she wrote, learning about love in all forms. A family reunion loomed when Margaret's parole was granted after 5 years. She moved to a halfway house in Willow Creek, conditions strict. The sisters debated visiting. It's a chance for closure, Lydia argued. Brielle relented, the drive tense with anticipation. Arriving, they found Margaret aged, humbled. Thank you for coming, she said, voice soft. Tea in hand they talked, halting at first, then deeper. Margaret admitted. I was wrong. Fear ruled me. Can you forgive? Brielle's eyes welled. Forgiveness doesn't erase scars. Lydia added. But we're trying. The conversation unearthed buried emotions. Margaret's own repressed feelings from youth, societal molds that shaped her cruelty. Tears flowed, a catharsis long overdue. Leaving they felt lighter but wary. Trust rebuilt slowly, visits increasing, boundaries firm. Back in Ann Arbor, life presented new challenges. Brielle's work exposed her to stories mirroring theirs. Teens disowned, couples divided. One case hit close. A mother rejecting her daughter. Brielle advocated fiercely, drawing from experience. Lydia supported, but internally battled resentment. Why did we have to suffer? She confided in therapy. The therapist nodded. Your story sparks change. Indeed, Willow Creek had shifted, schools implemented inclusivity programs, inspired by their case. A betrayal tested their bond when an old friend leaked private photos to tabloids, reigniting scandal. Headlines screamed, Lake Sisters' secret life exposed. Threats resumed, forcing them to relocate temporarily. Brielle raged. Why can't they leave us alone? Lydia calmed her, but the invasion stung. A reminder of vulnerability. They sued for privacy, winning a small victory, but damage lingered. Reflection deepened with time. Lydia pondered the moral ambiguities. Was Margaret's act unforgivable, or a product of environment? Their love, once forbidden, now celebrated in circles but at family cost. Brielle evolved, advocating nationally, her speeches powerful. We chose truth over silence, paying dearly but gaining freedom. Audiences applauded, but Lydia questioned. Freedom for whom? Margaret lived quietly, volunteering at church, promoting tolerance, a transformation born from ruin. As they approached their 30s, stability settled. They adopted a dog, symbolizing normalcy. Holidays included cautious family gatherings, Margaret attending virtually at first, then in person. Laughter mixed with awkward silences, healing incremental. Yet, undercurrents of debate remained. Society's progress versus personal toll. One evening, watching the sunset, Brielle asked, "Would you change anything?" Lydia paused. "The pain shaped us. But yes, sometimes I wonder." Their love endured, resilient amid trials. Willow Creek honored them indirectly with a community center plaque for champions of change. Pride swelled, tempered by loss. In quiet moments, Lydia wrote a memoir draft, capturing the drama. Shocks, betrayals, awakenings. Publishing meant reopening wounds, but silence felt like defeat. Brielle encouraged, "Our story matters." The decision loomed, a final crossroads. Ultimately, they pressed forward, embracing the complexity. Life's tapestry wove pain and joy, choices defining legacies. As Margaret visited for the first time in their home, sharing a meal, tentative bonds reformed. The lake incident, once a nightmare, became a catalyst for growth. But questions lingered, sparking endless reflection. Was it right to prioritize personal truth over family unity, even if it led to irreversible damage?